So what's going on, y'all? As y'all can see, we're out here on the Ducati. I'm actually on my way and I hopped off the bike just so y'all can see her. That's crazy. I'm actually on my way to the Ducati dealership to get her initial inspection, not necessarily the inspection for the state, but for them to just do a once over and look over. I guess Ducatis have some type of annual inspection, and this little, I don't know if y'all can see that, a little wrench comes on, and I guess the Ducati dealership's the only one who can turn that off. But also, I want to talk to y'all about the story on how I ended up with this bike on my ride up there, and then also talk to y'all about this service and how much it costs, and this is going to be ridiculous.
Infinit Ryda. Infinit Ryda.
So let me tell you about how I ended up with this Ducati and ended up having to drive all the way to Virginia to get this one. Probably about, what was it, maybe 3 weeks ago? Something like that, 4 weeks ago, something like that. I ended up picking up a Ducati from this car dealership in Lancaster, South Carolina. It's called J&J Auto Sports. They had, same year, 2012, Ducati Monster 1100 Evo. And I felt like it was a good price, so I went and checked out the bike. When I got there, what the heck was that I ran over? When I got there, the bike had a couple imperfections, but me, I don't look at cosmetic imperfections as a downside because I customize all my bikes anyway. Like, the shifter was missing a little bit, which he said it was dropped on its side, which I know a lot of people drop bikes and things like that, so it is what it is. I was going to replace the shifter, and then it had a couple other little issues and blah blah blah. So I asked him, this bike got a clean title, everything's good on it, right? He said, yeah. It had really low miles. It had something like 6,000 miles on it. So I decided to buy it. I hopped on the bike and I'm riding it home. And this is like an hour 20 minutes from my house. So I'm riding for about a good, I'd say a good 35-40 minutes. Boom, bike cuts off, and I'm like, what the hell? So the bike cuts off, and then I get it started back up, and I start riding, and the gas light comes on. So I'm like, oh, okay, the gas is just low. That's what's wrong with it. Da, 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 da. So I get it to a gas station, fill the tank up, start riding it again. Within like 5-10 minutes, boom, bike cuts off again. So I call the guy like, hey, well, I actually message him. I text him and say, hey, there's nothing wrong with this bike, right? You told me there was nothing wrong with it. It's clean title, everything like that, right? He's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the bike. I've never came across any issues and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, had to run home, get the truck, load the bike up, get it to the house. Same day I got it to the house, I started taking it apart. Upon taking it apart, I decided to check the fuel tank because my buddy Daniel told me to check it just to see it may be something, some dirt or sludge or something old in the tank. So I take it off, there's sand in the freaking gas tank. So at this point I start getting concerned. I'm like, okay, there's sand in the gas tank, you know, it's got a broken shifter peg, like what's up with this bike though? So I messaged him again, like, hey, they were sand in the tank, send the pictures and everything, like, everything's good though, right? He's like, yeah, the bike's good, this, that, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you sure this is a clean title? So he would not respond to me when I asked that question. He did not respond. So I ended up ordering a new fuel pump because I felt like that fuel pump was clogged. Put new spark plugs on it. Did the carbon box delete. What else did I do? I did a lot to the bike. Air filter, all that stuff. Got the new fuel pump in. Got the sand cleaned out, tank cleaned out, everything. Started running. Was running perfectly fine. So I'm riding it, one day down the street, boom, cuts off and would not freaking crank back up, period. So I called a guy, and I mean, I tell him what happens, and nothing happens. So no, wait a minute. I got that backwards. What happened was, he ended up, I got the title in the mail. And when I got the title, it said salvaged on it. And I'm like, salvage, rebuild? Dude told me this was a clean title. So I messaged him. I said, hey, what's up, man? This title is salvaged. I don't buy salvaged bikes unless it's disclosed to me, and you're required to disclose it to me. If any of you don't know this, if a dealership does not disclose to you that a bike is a salvage title, it's committing fraud, and you report them to the state, and it's just a shit show for them. Like it just goes downhill from them. So I messaged him like, hey, you didn't disclose this is a salvage title to me, and he wouldn't respond. So I'm like, okay, this dude's a butthole. I'm stuck with the bike at this point. So my dad is actually a dealer in South Carolina as well. He owns his own dealership. So I had my dad reach out to the owner, which isn't the guy who sold it to me. It was the owner's partner. So long story short, I went and got my plates, which is expensive. I paid like $300 for plates. North Carolina, getting titled in plates is just stupid. So I went and got my plates, and at that point, I took the bike out that night and went for a ride to make sure everything was good to go. I'm riding it, it's doing perfectly fine. Then boom, just shuts off out of nowhere and would not crank back up. So we had to bring the truck out. Me and Miss Ryda had to load that thing up on the truck without any power, which sucked. So we got it in the truck, got it home. At this point, I'm pissed. So I called the owner of the dealership, the guy whose name is on the LLC from the Secretary of State of South Carolina. So I call him and I tell him, I've been documenting everything. I got the history of this motorcycle. I got every detail about the bike. And you sold me a salvaged bike without disclosing it to me. I'm going to report you and take you to court. And your dealership is probably going to get shut down, and you're going to get fully investigated. So he ain't want those problems. So he offered to give me my money back. He gave me my money back for the bike, picked up the bike, and he agreed to give me another $500 once I got the title back in the mail for all of my issues and situations where I kind of put the thumb down on him and pressured him to do that. So we met, he gave me my extra $500, I gave him the title, and we were kind of done with that situation. But I had already purchased a whole bunch of parts for that 2012 Ducati Monster, and some of them couldn't be returned. Some of them were custom parts, which you'll end up seeing. So I had to find another Ducati Monster, same year, you know, same model, because that's the bike I wanted, and I want to use the parts that I got. So I came across this one, which was $1,000 more than the other one, but it has a clean title. It's been well taken care of and maintained. The guy had already put in aftermarket shocks, springs, all that good stuff. He had already put the bar end mirrors on. He gave me all the original parts, and I could tell he took great care of this bike because everything on it was done, and it was in good shape. So I ended up driving all the way to Virginia to pick this bike up, and yeah, this is where we are now. I'm on my way to take it to expensive Ducati dealership for them to do the annual maintenance, because Ducati doesn't make it to where people who like to work on their own bikes can turn that stupid light off themselves. And yeah, there's that. So let's get up here to the dealership and let's see how much they're going to get me for.
Infinit Ryda.
If you're wondering why I had to take it easy on the freeway, I'm going to show you why. Because this chain has so much slack in it, because he went down one in the front. And yeah, I'm gonna try to get the original back on. So my bike is there. They putting up the bikes in. The Evo.
The stripe model?
Yeah, with the stripe on it. It's cool. It happens. They actually made a mistake. Pulled my bike in. Alrighty.
Look right there.
I see it.
Now we good.
Yeah, we good, we good. Be out of y'all way in a second. Take care. Alright, you too. So the bike got a clean bill of health. The only thing that really needed done on her was they ended up having to put new belts on here. New timing belts, which it looks like those got to get done every 2 years no matter what. Ducatis are expensive as shit. And they put a new air filter in because they said mine was pretty filthy, I guess. So the guys in there were really cool. I feel like they were good people. The only issue I had with Motorcycles of Charlotte is the prices they kept quoting me were extremely inconsistent. Like the first amount they told me when I called over the phone was totally different than the second time, and then I called to confirm to make sure I had the amounts right, and it was different. And then when I left and went to pick up the bike, came out to be even different. But again, I mean, they had to add the belts on, but the base price even changed. I don't know if I got screwed or if I didn't, but you know, it is what it is. There's not really any Ducati dealerships in this area, so what other choice did I have? But it feels good to be back to the regular sprocket, so that means my speedo is going to match up now. It doesn't have as much of that initial jerk when you hit the gas, but Monsters are naturally, you know, they torquey. As you can see, they're naturally little aggressive bikes. So I don't think I needed, or I don't think the guy I bought it from needed to go down one in the front in the first place, but he did. And what always makes me nervous is that sound that the engine makes when you start ripping on it. But they said that's just these bikes' nature, and to rip on it and not be afraid of that. So I guess it is what it is. So they basically did what's called the full annual checkup, I guess. You don't have to do that every year, but they highly suggest it, where they went over all the torque specs over the whole entire bike. It honestly looks like they put new fluid in my clutch, because that was brown when I dropped it off. They're supposed to like top off fluids, torque every bolt on here, making sure like the wheel lug nut and everything else is at the right torques. They changed the air filter, changed the timing belts, basically gave it a clean bill of health. And what's crazy is I'm going to be doing a lot to this bike over the next few months, weeks, or days. Depends on how long I decide to ride her in this semi-stock format, because I have all new everything at the house right now to customize this bike. But the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna film everything as far as me doing the installs of each thing I'm gonna do to this bike individually. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put out the final video of the Monster after I customize her, and then I'll go back and put out the videos of the individual upgrades, because I don't want y'all to see bits and pieces of how I'm doing her. I want you to see the finished product. Let me get closer to the house and I'm gonna check back in. Woo! Jeez! Man, this thing will go. This bike is so light. Man, this thing is so light and so just flickable, nimble. I know I call other bikes nimble, but golly, this thing definitely does. You can tell this is a V-twin, air-cooled motor. It get hot in between them legs though. But I'm glad the Monster got a clean bill of health. When I get to the house, I'm gonna go over with y'all everything. That was a Corvette thing. I'm gonna go over everything that got done on the bike as far as its first service under me. And the only reason I did that again is because I don't know if I said it already, but I just got the bike, so I feel like a full once over was definitely worth it, to help with the longevity of this bike, especially considering I already love this thing. Oh my god, you twist that throttle and she goes. As soon as I get to the house, I'll pull out the receipt and go over what I spent today, what was done on the bike, And yeah, all that good stuff. Then we'll end this video for the day. But yeah, let's get to the house. All right, so we are back in the garage. Y'all not gonna get to see much of the garage in this video because I'm still remodeling it and it's a hot mess right now. But here is the checks they went over on the motorcycle. I'm not sure how clear or how good y'all can actually see that, but they turned off my maintenance light, which only a Ducati dealership can turn off. They checked to make sure there were no recalls, checked the air filter, visually checked the front forks and the rear shock absorber seals. They checked the brake and clutch levers, checked front and rear brake disc wear and the pads, like checked the wear on the pads or whatever. They checked the proper tightening of the front and rear brake caliper screws, nuts, and bolts. They checked the front and rear wheel nuts and the rear sprocket nut tightening. They checked the frame to the engine. They made sure that the bolts to the frame to the engine was good to go, which I really appreciate them for that. They checked the wheel hub bearings. They measure your chain, which I had them put my stock sprocket back on, as y'all saw in the beginning of the video. So they got my chain right where it should be. They checked the steering tube bearing clearance. They checked the freedom of movement and the tightening of the side stand. They checked all the gaiters and visible hoses. They checked the rear brake lever of free play and handlebar. They checked the cable clutch lever, if it was a cable clutch. Mine isn't. Mine is hydraulic clutch. They checked the tire pressure wear. They checked the operation of all the electric safety devices, making sure like the ABS and all that good stuff works. They checked the lighting, turn signals, horns, visually checked the coolant levels, which mine don't got coolant, and checked for circuit damage where present, which mines don't have. They softly cleaned the motorcycles. You know, they wipe it down real soft like. I guess it says a service coupon registration with turning off the service warning light. So they did all that good stuff. So let me show you what I paid. All right, first things first. Let's see the actual stuff they ended up having to do, which it looks like the annual service was performed. They did do new timing belts for me because they said mine been on there for longer than 2 years and they were starting to stretch, and I ain't taking that risk. They did a new air cleaner, which I didn't even know they were going to do. I didn't tell them to do that, but they definitely charged me for it because my air cleaner was dirty, which I'm not mad. I appreciate them for doing that. They checked my oil level. Looks like when I did my oil change, I put too much oil in it, so they kind of drained a little bit out for me. They topped off my reservoir. They topped off my clutch fluid, and they reset the maintenance light. So they recommended that I needed O-rings for a line connector 4, which I don't know what that is, but they put them in there, and that I needed a new air cleaner. So my air filter was $34.76. The O-rings were 99 cents a piece. Looks like I needed 2 of those. And then the annual service was $340. The belt check was $170. How much did I pay all together? And they installed the factory sprocket, which was $85. That's what I paid right there. Is that focusing? Come on, focus. Focus. You can focus. Can you focus? This DJI Pocket sucks. Right there. That's what I paid. $920 freaking dollars for my first service. Yeah. That had me highly disappointed. But at least the bike's taken care of. I'll be able to put out more videos. I feel safe riding this thing now. But yeah, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Like the content. That way, more people will be exposed to it and view it in case they're thinking about getting a Ducati. They know that they about to get raped when it's time to go get it serviced, which that wasn't really that bad for everything they had to do. But, you know, I'm about to go relax and try to clear my head because, yeah, I just spent a lot of money and I ain't got that kind of dough. Deuces.